Today's conversation is so full of heart because we're talking to Jaime Breeze, who we adore and admire so much. Jaime is multifaceted when it comes to communicating with spirit. She's able to communicate with all facets of spirit, including deceased loved ones, as well as animals. Today, we'll be focusing mostly on Jaime's animal communication. We've both had experiences with Jaime that have helped us with our animal children, as well as in life. Hi, Jaime.
Hi, Jaime.
Hi, Robin. Hi, Karen.
So good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about your gift.
Yeah, so I'm a spiritual medium, psychic, and animal communicator. And I grew up kind of doing this work personally, like not fully showing those around me my abilities to connect with spirit or animals. And so I feel like when I think about it, I started connecting with animals at the age of 3 with my cat growing up. Her and I would have deep conversations. And it wasn't until I started speaking to my parents about my conversations with my cat that I realized they didn't talk to her. And so I thought that was very strange. And it just took me by surprise. Like, you don't talk to animals. And also during that time, I was seeing spirits, I was seeing angels, and I was able to predict people's futures in some sort of way. But again, I felt that this was quite a normal thing and everyone was doing it. So I've been doing this work for, I guess, 38 years now.
Ask about the conversation part. When you say you have conversations, what does that actually mean? Are you literally hearing them in words, or is it just sort of this knowing that you have of what they're feeling?
So with animal communication, Karen, it's all based on telepathy. And telepathy is the world's oldest form of language. And we all have that capability. All creatures on this planet are telepathic. However, when we are children, we are learning a verbal language. So we kind of put that telepathy level on the back burner and stop using that side of our brain. So it's just a muscle in our brain that can be retrained. And we just have to be open to that. And it's like going to the gym and reworking a muscle. It's there. And so anyone can be telepathic with their animals. And when we receive telepathic messages, it's in a form of like a thought, a feeling, a color. And it's just coming to you kind of like in your mind's eye in a way. And that's how the information is transferred from an animal to humans. And whether you know you have this capability or not, if you're really close to your animal, chances are you're being telepathic with them on a daily basis. And you might not realize it, but you know when your dog needs something, you know when your cat is trying to get your attention for some reason, that's all based on telepathy. But the interesting thing is doing this work, realizing the ultimate and innate wisdom our animals actually have and how much more they know than we give them credit for.
Can you talk about that? What has your experience been with understanding the wisdom that they have here, that they come into this lifetime with? And how do you see animals' role in this world?
Well, so in my work as a spiritual medium and animal communicator, I do communicate with a lot of spirit on the other side. And spirit, when I say that, is a form in a higher vibration. So whether that's family, friends, loved ones, your fur babies. So they have kind of shown me this innate wisdom on the other side. And when I communicate with an animal who is in the physical body, their energetic form is very similar to those who are on the other side. And when I communicate with an animal, they have shown me that they are in touch with the other side. They work in between worlds in a way, which is kind of interesting. So when I communicate with animals, it's for physical, behavioral, emotional needs, or if someone just wants to check in with their baby to make sure, hey, I'm giving them the best life possible. And, you know, a lot of my readings are based upon that. And it's funny because our animals will come through and say, these are my likes, these are my dislikes. This can help with my breathing issues. You know, they do give me a lot of medical information as well. And one of my favorite stories, Robin, my green apple story, which I know I've shared with you before, but I'll share it again. So I was communicating with this 12-year-old German Shepherd named me Mika, and her mom wanted to check in with her, make sure she was doing everything possible to give her the best and healthiest life possible. And Mika wanted to share with me that her mother suffered these excruciating migraines. And Mika shared with me that the pain was so intense, it would go all down the one side of her face and into her neck. And then what this dog did was shared an image of a green apple. And again, when I say shared with me an image of a green apple, in my mind's eye, there was a vision of a green apple. And I was like, what does that mean? So I use Google a lot in my work because sometimes I just don't understand what the animals are telling me. So I Googled green apples and migraines. And the first thing that came up was the Smell and Research Institution in the United States claims that the smell of green apples can help reduce the severity of migraines. And at this time, I didn't know that my client had suffered from migraines. So when I consulted with her after my conversation with her dog, she was floored, saying, yes, I've been suffering with migraines for decades. So to me, that showed me the wisdom our animals have. This dog knew that.
And it's not like the dog is Googling. And the other thing that I just want to point out to everyone is that you are doing this by setting the intention to connect with Mika in this case, with the energy of Mika, with the permission of its mother, its human mother, right? And that you're doing this from your home in Canada. And I don't know where Mika and her mother live, but it's far away. And so you're not having to do this in person. I think that's what I'm trying to help others understand. You've done this, and I'm sure some of our stories of working with you and our animals will come up. But I'm in Chicago, Karen's in Dallas, you're in Canada, and you're doing this. For you, it's helpful to have a picture of the dog or cat or animal or person or whomever. That helps you, I think, zero in a little bit on their energy. But you do this from afar. You're not on the phone, you're not on Zoom when you're initially doing some of your reading.
Right. Yeah. And that's the beauty of telepathy and energy work, because everything is energy. We're all energy. And by setting an intention, like you said, it's like pinpointing who you want to contact. So I do like having a photo because I can pick up a lot of psychic energy from that photo. So I can see what your animal, who your animal is, like get their core essence per se by having that photo. And the other cool thing about this type of work is it doesn't matter what language anyone speaks.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Right. You're receiving the messages in a way that you can understand and then translate.
Yeah, absolutely. Another profound story I had was a cat from France. He was having this horrible time eating, and his mom contacted me and she said, I've taken him to the vet. They've done x-ray after x-ray. We don't understand why his mouth is inflamed and all this stuff. And this cat, his first language is French, we're going to say, but he showed me an image, and it was so clear to me that he had a bone stuck in his jaw. And so his mom trusted this process and took him back to the vet, and they did another x-ray. And sure enough, they found a minuscule type bone lodged in his gums. So it turned out 6 months prior to this, he had dental surgery, and a piece of the tooth got broken off when they were extracting the tooth. So he knew for 6 months that he had this bone stuck in his gums, and it just made his entire mouth inflamed and he couldn't eat properly. So that's a cool example of not only is this capable through different languages, but over long distances, over the ocean. Like you said, Robin, don't have to be right there.
It's unbelievable. And I know you've done several readings for me and for our family. And one of the readings had to do with our rescue dog, Al, who we really didn't know much about. We just knew that he had been found in Tennessee. There was a very loose idea about what had happened to him. They didn't even know how old he was. Anyway, my point is we talked to you because we knew that there had to be some traumatic events that had happened in this lifetime, because he was trepidatious around a lot of different movements and so forth, although so sweet and so kind. And And there was an immediate attachment to my husband, which was fascinating to all of us. And you were able to zero in right away on the connection between him and my husband that goes back lifetimes, and with me as well. And then you were able to figure out what actually had been his circumstances in this lifetime that led to becoming rescued, but certain reasons why he has certain reactions to our movements, but also even things like peeing in the house. So for anyone listening who has a pet that they don't understand why they pee in the house, you were able to figure out why. And for him, it's actually a security thing because of his circumstances. He had been left outside for very long periods of time, kicked, chained to things. I mean, there's so many reasons. Now it gives us compassion and understanding. And you were also able to talk to him and help him not pee in the house, to let him know how much we love and care about him. It's been very helpful. I think since we've had a reading with you many months ago, I think he's only peed in the house once, which is huge.
Think about how great that would be, like if the shelters could have access to that information before an animal was adopted, right? So that they could have that little insight into their behaviors. So often it happens that that poor little animal gets home and maybe doesn't have a good fit with that family because all of those behaviors are either unknown or you don't know what their roots are. So it's such a wonderful insight to be able to give to people. And I'll just add, we had our Bentley done by Jaime just about a week and a half ago. And it's so incredible. We did so much invasive testing on him that gave us no answers, and spent really a fortune on just trying to understand what was going on with him. He was going blind. We couldn't figure out why. He was having seizures. He was gaining weight. He was like uncontrollably eating. It was just so many weird things. And he looked like he was in shock, and we couldn't figure out why. And I'll never forget, Jaime, you coming to that call. First of all, you had all your research, all your paperwork of all this Googling that you had been doing. And you were so excited about the fact that it was like something that we would never have expected, nor I don't think anybody would have found easily. You were pinpointing for us to look at a little pinch in his neck that happened when he was outside running. We have two other big dogs. I know he runs with them all the time in this little area of the apartment. And he had quickly looked over his shoulder for the other dogs and had that crimp in his neck. And it was literally impacting his vision, his cognitive ability in a lot of ways. Anyway, you had a Googled diagnosis for us to not only have them look for this, but also to find some less invasive ways of dealing with that. So seeing a cranial specialist, even a dog chiropractor or massage or acupuncturist, to really try those things first versus go down this deep rabbit hole of trying to get it diagnosed elsewhere. So grateful for that. And then also to have those insights into what he was feeling, the confusion, the fear of what was going on as all of this was happening to his poor little body. So that connection that my dog has with my husband is very clear and soulful as well. And just your ability to be able to pick up on that. And just one other thing I wanted to add that you touched on before that just hit me was the fact that you said that tapping into animals is really like tapping into people or souls from the other side. And it never really clicked in my mind, because there are such love essences on earth that makes so much sense. Of course you would be able to tap into that. Of course they would be as close to almost heaven on earth as you could get because of that connection with love that they have and that love that they give. So really beautiful.
Well, and isn't that interesting with Bentley? Because Bentley is the one that gave me that information. Like that information came from him.
Mind blowing.
So isn't that so cool? Because I didn't connect on a higher source and be like, okay, what's wrong with Bentley? Bentley has that innate wisdom, that universal wisdom that all our animals do. And he was able to pinpoint it. And it's called cerebral artery dissection. And
that's amazing.
And Robin, it was so funny because Bentley showed me him turning his head to look at the other dogs, and he pinched that nerve. And doing my research again, because I'm not medically trained. So anytime an animal gives me this information, I Google it to see like, why is this making sense? You can get this cerebral artery dissection from washing hair, doing a certain yoga pose, jumping on the trampoline, and playing tennis again was another big one because you're twisting your neck a little bit. But I thought that was so crazy that even just from shampooing your hair, the way you twist sometimes can create that. So for Bentley to show me that he just whipped around too fast was awesome. An awesome diagnosis to see that, because at first I was like, okay, how did he get this pinched nerve? Was he in a car, like a fender bender? Did, Karen, you were worried about someone maybe stepping on him like one of the dogs. And he was like, nope, I just turned around too fast. And now it's creating all these neurological kind of upsets. And it's a simple little thing, but traumatic at the same time.
And it can mirror, that's what's so scary for animals, because they can't tell you when they are in pain. So you are kind of grasping at straws on what is causing it. And to be able to really see actually when the cause happened, it's something that we never would have guessed. We were going to go down the neurological path, which in essence, this is what it is. But at least we have the source of what the problem was and what easier solutions we can use.
Yeah. So again, Robin, so Bentley recommended for himself craniosacral therapy.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And then he said maybe acupuncture, but he wants to do CST first.
Oh my God. This is just unbelievable. And yet at the same time, in our world, it makes sense.
Isn't that so amazing? And that's why working with animals and understanding their wisdom, they just have such infinite knowledge.
Yeah.
I always say they're smarter than people because they're more in tune.
Yes, well, that's the thing. They are. And I think so much of that is that they're not bogged down by our day-to-day and keeping up with this and that. And we get further away from that universal truth and love.
And love. Yeah, they're
they're here to always remind us.
Communicate without words all the time.
I read this thing recently where when a dog wags its tail, it increases the vibration in the room. And I was like, that is so true, because they just bring pure joy to you. And because they are so in tune with everything, it's not uncommon that when I'm connecting with an animal in the physical realm, that they do bring in your loved ones who are on the other side as well. So that's really cool, because they do see spirits, because death is not death for them. Like, death to us is so scary. It seems like an ending to us. And that's why I don't usually use that word, because it's just going into a different form. So they always see spirit around us. And that's how they're so full of love, because they have that energy base.
That's so true. And actually, I think that's actually a really good segue to talk about grieving our animals and an experience that you have gone through in recent years, and also reconnecting with that same spirit of an animal. Can you talk about your connection with Breeze?
Yeah. So for those of you who are listening who don't know my story, I have a dog, Breeze, who passed away 5 years ago and is in a new form now. She reincarnated back to me. So when I first met Breeze in her previous body, I knew we had this soul connection. I knew we had lived life after life together, and we were soulmates. And I know a lot of people believe soulmates are like a man and woman, or a woman and woman, and a human bond, but I don't. I think it can be human or animal related. And my dog is definitely my soulmate. And so Breeze unfortunately had to transition the day after her 16th birthday. And I was just completely gutted. I didn't know how I was going to live the rest of my life without her. And I thought, I'm not going to live the rest of my life without her. I'm going to start researching animal reincarnation and how to get our animals back. And then I didn't even think at the time, okay, well, I was communicating with my cat when I was young, and I've worked with spirit before, and I've given readings before, but I've never done it on a professional basis. So I didn't understand my abilities fully yet. I started reaching out to Breeze on the other side, and it took a little while for her to come forward and give me messages because my grief was so thick.
Can you talk about how this incredible process has worked for you and how it can work for others? Can you talk about animal grief as well? Because I know you and I have talked about it at length, because it's something that people don't seem to recognize as clearly as grief between humans.
Yeah, so it's not recognized in our society. When we lose an animal companion, and again, like, it could be your soulmate, you might consider your cat your daughter, and when they transition to the other side, it is like losing a family member to many of us, and it's not recognized in our society. Like, you have to go back to work the next day, or it's just a dog, you can get another one. That doesn't sit well with me. I think we need to change that. We need to be more accepting of it in society, because animals mean so much to us, and those people who are grieving their animals, their life has now changed completely. It's not the same. No, it wasn't just a dog. It It was my sister, it was my brother, it was my daughter, it was my best friend. And people grieve animals for months. And I have a few clients right now they are struggling hard because of this. So when Breeze was on the other side, I grieved so hard. I went to psychiatrists, I went to doctors, I went to grief counselors. No one could help me. No one. And I was lost. I was beside myself. I didn't know what I was going to do. And that's when I started reaching out to Breeze, because I needed to know that our relationship wasn't over. And that was the hardest part. I was terrified that I would never see her again. It was just done. And that's so unfair, you know? And then finally, when she started communicating with me from the other side, I realized that it's not over. And I really want to help people grieving understand that your relationship never ends. It's just in a different form right now. So we need to bridge the gap between the physical and the non-physical world in order for that relationship to continue. And it sounds crazy, but when our animal is on the other side, we can strengthen that bond. We can make it even stronger than it was. And I've been shown so many times with clients and animals who are on the other side, them reincarnating back. And I've learned from Breeze and the other animals that we don't want to live here sick and in pain. So we're literally just going to go get a new body and come back to you. You just have to trust.
Wow. Wow. I love that. What were some of the signs that you got from Breeze that you just knew?
Yeah, because I felt like you were kind of on a treasure hunt, you know?
I was. So she started communicating with me 4 months after she passed away. And it took that long because I was in such grief and denial. And then I was determined. I was, okay, I'm getting her back. So she started with dreams. She started with certain songs all of a sudden coming on the radio. The important thing is to notice these signs that spirit is giving to you. By acknowledging these signs, you're building that strength in the energetic relationship so they can give you more information and more signs, whether that is a human family member or an animal family member. It's all the same. So Breeze started giving me these signs, and she gave me the inner knowing that she was coming back to me. So I started talking to her and saying when, where, how, and she just kept giving me more information. And it was about a 2.5-year journey where I was collecting her evidence and data, per se, in a journal of where and how to find her. And she started giving me dates, specific dates. She gave me June 6th, which turned out to be her conception date. I thought it was her birth date, so I misunderstood that. So I was looking in this part of the world, looking for litters of puppies, thinking it was her, but I was a few weeks off because I thought June 6th was her birth date, but it was actually August 7th. She actually gave me a vision of what she was going to look like as well. And thankfully, she was only a 3-hour drive from where I live and not super far. I know someone's animal who reincarnated. They were in Hawaii and their dog reincarnated in Chicago. So it was a little more tricky, but she gave me all this information, including her birth name that she was going to be named. But it was funny because that birth name, it was Zoe. And so I thought there was a woman named Zoe who had Breeze. So I was looking everywhere for a woman named Zoe, couldn't find one, harassing everyone in my path. Do you know someone named Zoe who might have puppies? And I found her on Kijiji. It was the picture she showed me and her name Zoe. So that's how I found her. And it was in the area she told me, which was a 3-hour drive from where I live.
And you just knew when you got her in your arms, you just knew it was her.
I did know it was her, but it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows like I thought it was going to be. It was like really muddy and cold and raining. And I had this horrible cold at the time. And all she wanted to do was sleep. And I was like, Breeze, it's mom. It's mom. And my boyfriend actually has a video of me holding her for the first time, and she's covered in mud because it was from a farm. So it wasn't the picturesque kind of reunion I thought, but it was still perfect. Through this process, and Breeze also showed me when she was on the other side, just to back up a little bit, she showed me us being intertwined together forever. And what she showed me in this dream was an umbilical cord coming from me to her. And she was this little puppy floating in space, and we were connected by this golden cord. And that made me understand we're one. And so don't worry. So if you're going through an animal grief, just try and remember the relationship isn't over. It's just in a different form, and they'll come back to you. And everyone who meets Breeze, who knew her in her previous body, they're just blown away. They're like, yep, that is her. She's exactly the same, different color fur, different breed, but her eyes, her demeanor, her attitude, like everything to a T.
That gives people, I think, so much hope. I feel like you sharing your story and having gone through what you have, it gives so many people hope, because there is that soulmate connection, and whether that's actually an animal or person.
Yeah. And I even went to my mentor, who was a spiritual medium and psychic, and she couldn't give me information.
Wow.
Like that's how, so it was all learning. Yeah.
Wow.
It was all learning. And Breeze was like, I guess Breeze was saying, you know, I can't come through and give my mom messages because she needs to learn how to get the messages from me in order to help other people.
That's right.
At the time, I was screaming and so frustrated over it because I just wanted to hear from her, knowing that she was still with me. But I had to learn on my own, and look where it's led me.
So talk about that too a little bit, Jaime, and how you had the courage to really transition this into sort of your life's work. How did that happen, and what gave you the confidence that this is really what you were here to do?
I've just always had that inner knowing. And when I was younger, I said to my mom, I'm going to be a spiritual healer and a psychic. And I've always been pushing towards that. And society makes you kind of take a step back from your dreams at times. And that's my inner calling. And I've always done kind of what I felt was right. I never kind of go with society's plan. I'm always on the other path. And with Breeze coming back, that's not something you can ignore. It was so profound and so amazing. And like, I have my journal still with all the details that she shared with me. So it's proof, it's physical proof that this happened. And I have like witnesses around me who were with me on this journey. And my mission is to help those grieving their animals and let them know that their animals can reincarnate back. So pretty much what I did, I just put myself out there, and I started on social media and Instagram, and I work with clients all over the world now. It's been phenomenal. I've only been doing this on a professional level for 2 years, and because people are searching online to help with this, and there is more and more avenues popping up, I'm noticing, to help with animal grief and acknowledging it. But people need this.
Absolutely. I want to ask, when you did tell your mom what you were seeing or what you were feeling, and then that you even potentially wanted to be a spiritual healer when you grew up, what did she say? Because I know part of that gift that you recognized early on is now something that you're helping other children with. So can you talk about that part of everything?
Yeah. So my parents were very supportive. They tried to help me as much as they could, but it was pre-internet. So my mom would go to the library and look up psychic books and reincarnation books, because I was also born remembering some of my past lives as well, which I would speak openly about.
What?
So it's interesting. Breeze was a horse in one of my previous lives, and we were in an indigenous tribe, and we were both killed in this battle. And I remembered that very vivid when I was young, and I used to have dreams about it all the time. And I call it a scar, but it's actually referred to as a birthmark. But I have a scarf that I was born with from that previous incarnation. And so that was one of the first things I would speak to my mom openly about, is what the scar was from, how I was killed. And I gave her the name of the tribe I was from. Unfortunately, she can't remember it, but I was getting ready today, and I instantly got the word Cherokee in my head. So now I'm wondering if I was a Cherokee. So Breeze and I were both killed in that life. It wasn't until I met Breeze in her previous body that I realized she was my horse. And it's funny because a lot of people say, do you know, Breeze has a lot of horse energy around her.
I noticed that when we met her the other day on the phone. She does. She's very regal.
And she trots like a horse too. So that was really interesting. So going back to your question, Robin, my mom did as much research as possible. And my mom's intuitive as well as my grandmother, who is now on the other side, but they always shut it out. So my mom believed. She was always a believer in this line of work and stuff. So I really wanted to go to post-secondary school for parapsychology, but my parents weren't very supportive of that. So they kind of steered me in a different direction, which is okay now because I've pulled myself back into my life plan.
And one of the things that you offer are ways to help children who have these abilities, right? For parents who aren't sure what to do.
Yeah, because that was a huge problem for me growing up. My parents were very supportive, but a lot of my teachers at school weren't. So all my peers would come to me and ask me questions about ghosts and say, my house is haunted. How can you help me? Or I was predicting people's futures and stuff. A lot of my teachers, thought I had a mental illness, and they would send me to the school counselor and try and get me on medications. And it was
That's scary. That's really
it was
scary.
Yeah.
And because people they just aren't aware and open. And growing up, it was a scary time for me because I would see spirit and I didn't know how to handle that. And going to bed at night as a kid and feeling like there's someone in your room and then you get taps on the shoulders is terrifying.
Yeah.
Or your toys are moving on their own. It's baffling. And so I did not sleep well for years. And then my cat, who I was very connected to, she would see spirit too. So we'd be lying in bed hiding. Her eyes would be darting around the room and she'd be hissing. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So that's why I wanted to create my Psychic Kid and Teen program to help young people who have psychic abilities, and I believe everyone does, to help these young people harness their powers and not distinguish them. And because it can be a scary time for people, but if we know how to strengthen it and turn it on, turn it off when we need, it's a game changer.
It is. Well, and that's the thing that I know I've learned even coming into doing some of this work as an adult is knowing how to protect myself and my space from entities that I don't want around. And again, I'm an adult needing to do that. So I can't imagine as a kid facing that on my own.
And we've many healers that have shut themselves down for years just for that very reason, because they didn't have that support.
And now we're kind of being more open to it, which is great. And there's more and more people harnessing their abilities and being open and being like, this is who I am, stepping into the power. But we shut it down because the church really did prohibit that for centuries. There was witch burnings and all that stuff. So people kind of repressed themselves over time, but now it's more accepted. And why not use our innate abilities? Now that I know what's happening and know what it is, I think it's empowering.
You've also trained yourself to be a really good interpreter of what you see and how to give that information to people in ways that they can integrate it into their day-to-day, or how they can apply it to their dog, like in real time. So it's one thing to be say, well, I see spirits or I hear spirits, but it's another to really become a resource for them when they're looking for answers and giving them some real guidance. I think it's kind of come a long way.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing is working in this type of field, it's not working with low energies. We're working with higher vibrations, angels, spirit, loved ones, God, Buddha, whoever you believe in on that higher vibration. It's not a scary low energy based work.
That's so true. And speaking of all of that, because we know that everybody has the ability, is there one thing that you could tell people listening today, if their pet is in the physical, is there something that they can do to try and understand their pet a little bit more? We just lost your video for a second.
So what I would suggest is trust. And our animals understand our language so much more than we give them credit for. They understand everything we're saying and what we're interpreting for them. So whether you want to speak to your animal out loud or in your head, the animal is going to receive your message. And if you don't receive it back, that's okay. You will start, but try and practice it. Let your animal know what the day's plan is. So if you have a dog, okay, we're going to go for a walk, then mom has to go to work, and then we'll go for another walk after dinner time. Give them their layout for the day. That is so important for one. But just acknowledging them and creating that space for them and allowing them to be a part of your life in that next level is very important. Having them involved, explaining everything to them, that's the first step. Absolutely. And they're going to receive that message 100%. Now, in order for you to receive that, it might take time. I believe meditation is an absolute powerful tool that we all should incorporate into our lives. And it doesn't have to be an hour or 2 hours, it just has to be a couple minutes, calming that mind and allowing energies to kind of start flowing within you. And yeah, so trust is the big thing. If you get a download of a picture that your animal wants to send you in your mind, or you think you hear they spoke to you about something, trust it.
Speaking of meditation, in the meditation, set aside a minute or two of an intention to say, I want to connect in with so-and-so pet, and see what you receive there.
And maybe utilizing that moment, that energetic connection to really listen in a little bit more about what you're hearing.
Yeah.
They tell you all the time, I think, and we probably hear so much more than we even realize. We just don't acknowledge it.
Absolutely. And our animals are just like people. They have needs, wants, likes, dislikes. And a lot of people just kind of put them to the side like they're an object in the house. And imagine doing that with a child, and your child starts acting out. Well, I wonder why. We have to look into it more. But like Karen, your dog Bentley mentioned he wanted the barbecue chicken with the spicy sauce. And Dad wasn't giving him the spicy sauce because he thought it was going to upset him. But he's like, no, I want the spicy homemade sauce. So you can't deny how smart they are. And by listening to that, you've just given him a little boost in life.
They're listening. They hear me.
Yeah.
It's so true. It's paying attention with Al. When you read him and helped us understand him better, he's so used to routine that, and I would assume that most animals are actually, and when things would disrupt the routine, it would cause him so much like anxiety. And so the anxiety would come out by barking and inconsolable. And we didn't understand that until we had that reading with you. And now it makes so much more sense. And if we communicate with Al and say to him, listen, today is going to be this way, X, Y, and Z, there is something to alleviate that anxiety.
That's a perfect example. Exactly. Like our animals are so smart, but you want to always remember, treat them kind of like, interact with them like you would a 5-year-old. So you have to let them know what is going on, why, how, where.
True. And using that, every 5-year-old is asking why all the time. Right.
Yes.
That's a great point. Remember that.
They're not human. They don't understand every aspect. They feel the energy, but they don't always understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and yet we treat them like that, but they do have the wisdom that is way beyond.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why it takes us. We need to honor our animals more and understand them more and treat them like they should be treated.
Yeah. We agree. And while we have you today, one of the things that we started talking about before we started taping today was something that Jaime helped Karen with last week, actually. And Karen and Jaime had time on the books to actually talk about Bentley, which we've talked about today. Karen actually suffered a tremendous loss in her life, and it impacted her as well as her son and those close to her. And if you both would feel comfortable sharing a little bit about that experience, because as Jaime did start out talking, she not only communicates with animals, she is able to communicate with other spirit, and that includes deceased loved ones.
Sure. I mean, for me, we had made the appointment with Jaime a couple of weeks prior. So when this event happened, it was my son's best friend passed away quickly. He had been living with us for a while. Graham had known him since junior high school. So they were really, really close brothers on every level, had gone through many experiences together. And so Tyler was down visiting us and was looking to make Dallas his home. He'd found a job here. He loved it here. He was comfortable with us. We're moving into a new home. So it was just really the perfect environment for him to really start fresh with the comfort of his soul brother by his side, and the rest of us, of course, too. So when we heard that Tyler had passed so quickly, obviously we quickly went back home to be with the family and to comfort them as best we could. But there was a lot of confusion about how Tyler had passed. A lot of questions were left unanswered. And obviously the biggest one is, oh my gosh, really, is he okay? way, because even though you have all these tools and maybe be believing in all of the things that we talk about all the time, when it's such a sudden, mysterious kind of death initially, you just can't get your head wrapped around it. And so I had sent a note to Jaime ahead of our call saying, I just felt like coming into that energetically, she needed to know where we were and what we were feeling. And she kindly took a moment and was able to tap into Tyler. I could tell it was something that was not easy to do because he was so newly on the other side. And yet his energy just obviously made itself known to Jaime. And she was able to give such tangible detail to me that I could pass along to his family. And as you can imagine, there's that little bit of fear of me being sort of the messenger in between. How ready is my son and Tyler's girlfriend and his mother? I ended up talking to on the phone for this information. I was a little afraid to deliver the wrong information or information that just felt too general and that wouldn't be comforting to them. But what Jaime was able to do is give tangible things down to the color of Tyler's car, to the fact that there was something in his car. There was a jacket of Graham's in his car that he had borrowed from Graham that we found later. A really lovely message for Mia, who Jaime was able to pick out her name. But I think the most moving thing that came out of it, particularly for Tyler's mom, Jaime asked, is there anything we can give to Alicia, Tyler's mom, that would help comfort her specifically? And Jaime was so honest. She said that wall of grief is really big right now, especially since it's so fresh. And she said, I'll give you this. I would rather give you something really, really specific, but all I can tell you is that I see Tyler with his hand on his mom's right shoulder. And I was like, that's awesome. I will pass that along. And so I was able to hang up and I talked to Graham, my son, Mia, and Alicia. And it was one moment of like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, after another, because it was so tangible, Tyler. It was just so real to them, all those details that I was able to give to them. And the mom hung up and called me right back. And she said, you know what, Karen, that message from Tyler about his hand on my shoulder, that is not a broad message at all. I have a tattoo on my right shoulder that I got for Tyler. And it was just like, we all just broke down and cried together. And then at that very moment, they started screaming again. And literally at that moment where we were still talking, the lights in Tyler's house where they were all sitting, because Jaime had said Tyler is literally there in the living room with them. Those living room lights started flashing. And it wasn't, listen, we can all explain a light bulb going out, right? But this was like a 3-tiered light. And it started with one, and then it went to 2 of the 3 lights flashing, and then them doing the flashing in unison. And the most beautiful thing happened is Tyler's youngest brother, who worshiped him, and I think is having the hardest time of all with the passing, had come down. He had come down because the dog was barking as well, and sat down to watch the lights going. And just as he settled on the couch to watch it, the lights stopped. So it was as if Tyler said, yeah, I'm here, dude. You know, I see you. And it was the evidence that they needed at that moment in time to know that Tyler was there and that he was okay. And there was no shadow of doubt in any of them when we finished that phone call. And so we have you to thank for that, Jaime, just to have the bravery, like you said, just to put it out there, whatever it was, that it was all so specifically needed for each one of those individuals at that point in time where they needed that reassurance more than ever. So indebted to you for that.
Well, thank you. And it's funny because before I do my sessions, I set my intention. So before our session, I was trying to feel Bentley's energy, get Bentley back in the room with me so we could have a great communication. And that's when I felt Tyler's presence come through. And that's how spirit works. They get the call. It's like using a cell phone. They get the call. Okay, someone's trying to connect with me. Let's connect. So it's about that trust. And the other thing is never second guess any messages, because it doesn't have to make sense to you. It will make sense to the person you're delivering the message to. So I'm going to be working with Tyler's family today after our podcast here. So I'm hoping we can get some more concrete evidence. But again, it is so fresh in their grief minds and whatnot. But he came through last week, so I'm feeling confident today about that.
Yeah. And I would say too, for those listening, what a gift that everyone was open enough to receive. First of all, Tyler was powerful enough to come through right away, and everyone involved was open enough to receive. And we know, from all the work that the three of us have been doing, that isn't always the case right away, because even for Karen, and I'll speak from being soul sisters and best friends, and I think even with all the tools that we have and the resources that we have, when such a tragedy like this strikes, you question everything. And thank goodness we have these tools and resources, because Karen has been able to use them and it's still so fresh. But Jaime, what you were able to do in such a short amount of time was quickly pivot. And that validation that you gave to her son, Tyler's family, and then having Tyler validate it with this physical act of showing those lights as Karen's reading the messages, it was just so miraculous, honestly. And I know, Karen, when we spoke right after, you're like, this has changed everything.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, so often you feel it made you really in the moment of grief, of profound grief, shifted the energy immediately to, they're right there. They really, really are. Right
there. Shift it to excitement a little bit, right?
It really was. And it was so profound that it was like we were gleeful.
Yeah.
Given that gift of knowing when we were so devastated. And it shifted everything. From that moment on, all we did and are still doing is looking for signs that he's there and he's delivering. It's like what you said before, Jaime. It's like you're strengthening that connection energetically because you're using that on a day-to-day basis to ask for the signs and look for the signs and receive.
And I think those listening to, the one thing I really want to point out is that we're not saying that you're not going to be sad or that you're not going to grieve. Like, that is a real thing. Like, you will still miss the 3D, that human actual connection, that I think you have to get readjusted to not seeing them in the way that you remember seeing them. However, the knowing that the energy has just changed form, which Jaime, I know you were saying, pointing out before, it has changed form and that they're still there is such relief.
Yeah. And doing this type of spiritual work does not shield us from grief at all. And again, like what you just said, Robin, about not having that physical form, we as humans love physical touch and sight. And when we don't have that, it doesn't exist in our minds for most people. And that's why I think grief can be tricky. So if Tyler's body isn't physically around that room, that's hard for people because it changes everything.
It does.
Life is different as we know it, but knowing that energy is still there, and for his family to be so open and accepting of his relationship while he's on the other side is going to be such a powerful tool for that.
It will help them continue the relationship.
It will.
Exactly. And again, the most important point is for like Tyler's brother and mom and Graham, that relationship is not over. It's never over. It's not ended. It's continuing. Right. And the important part is, and the hardest part is acknowledging that and accepting it and seeing where that goes next. Because people are so afraid you'll never see them again. That's not the case. And doing mediumship work, a lot of time, spirit tells me I'm waiting for them to come to my level because with reincarnation, it can be nerve-wracking thinking, well, what if my mom reincarnates back and I miss her when I'm on the other side? But spirit, most of the times it's shown me, I'm going to wait for them to transition so we can be together on this energetic realm. And then if we decide to go back to a human form, we can do that together.
Such a gift you give people to have this connection, to reaffirm that connection is really there. It's the best kind of healing you can offer. Really?
Yeah, I think for grieving, it is. And I'm not saying grief counselors and stuff aren't good as well, but I just didn't get what I needed when I was grieving and when I needed help. I think mediumship and animal communication and this type of work is the best healing.
I agree. I mean, I know, having lost my dad when I was young and not knowing that this was something that could be real. I mean, it helped me later in life when I didn't even know I needed that healing. I wish I had known it. And I know timing is everything. That's why I'm doing the work I'm doing. I want others to know that this is available to them and, and lessen the suffering.
Just thinking about Tyler's brothers now will always look. for him.
Yes.
Reach out for those signs because of that experience. That opened a whole door for them that never would have been there, I think, without your offering.
I know. And I'm so glad we were able to share this. I know, Jaime, you've talked about how you've had similar experiences helping many others and in that respect. And you are a gift. And thank you for sharing your gifts. Thank you for educating all of us, inspiring all of us today, talking about both animal communication as well as just spirit communication. I know that you have probably opened a lot of doors for people today to think differently.
Yeah, I hope so, because grief, again, going back to it, it's so scary for so many people. And we can kind of find a light in it if we seek, per se. As we're talking, there's these orbs coming in. So I don't know who that's for. I kept seeing them during our podcast. So I don't know if you kept seeing me looking. I just kept seeing the orbs popping through.
Okay.
So we're definitely creating some energy here.
No. It's Tyler. When he was a baby, his mom told me that his room, he always said he had a room full of orbs all the time.
Okay, good. I hope it's Tyler.
Wow. Wow.
Well, thank you so much for your gifts that you've given us personally, for following this work, for continuing to innovate too, the way you do your work and touch people. I love what you're doing with children. I think it's so important. And keep us posted on how we can continue to get your word out there of all the work that you're doing.
Thank you both for giving me this platform to speak about something I'm so passionate about, and anyone I can help, I'm flattered to.
Yes. And Karen and I know we will be working with you more as we continue on with all of our efforts, because I know there's lots of work to do together. And for those listening, you can find out more about Jaime or book a session with her or take one of her courses at Jaime, Jaime Breeze, BREEZE.com. And you can also follow her at The Mountain Medium on Instagram.
Thanks,
Thank
Jaime.
you so much, Jaime.
Thank
We love
you.
you.
Thank you. Love you too, ladies.
Hey.